Have you been whipping all your shots lately like this? We've all been there. Some days are just not yours. Maybe your aim is just feeling off, or perhaps it's something else. When people think of aim, they're most commonly thinking about mouse movement. What if I told you that positioning plays an even bigger role in aiming than moving your mouse? Let's go over what proper positioning looks like and what you may be doing wrong with your own positioning. First off, what exactly is a good position versus a bad one? We've made a simple list of points that you should review to determine whether or not you're in a good spot. First up, you want to take a look at your positioning and see if you're exposed to multiple angles. You never want to be in a position where you can be shot from multiple points. For example, if you're on Haven and playing up on A Heaven, peeking directly in the middle of the window isn't the best position to initially hold. This is because from here you're exposed to two choke points, A long and A short. If enemies peek you from both positions at the same time, you'll get crossfired and likely will be eliminated. You may need to end up here when playing retake, but for an initial starting point, it's not ideal. A similar position that would clear this checkbox is on the right side of Heaven. From here, you're only exposed to A long and can focus on one choke point versus two. You could also play the left corner of Heaven where you can isolate A short. However, this position is riskier as players from A long could spray through this wall and kill you. Whether you're going to be exposed to multiple angles should be one of the first things you think about when picking a position to play. Next, you want to ask yourself if you can fall back safely from your position. Taking things into a bigger picture, let's go through some positions on the A side of Bind. On this map, there are two boost positions that you could play if you have the right agent. The first is the double boxes at pocket, and the other is above triple boxes. The high ground with these positions make them seem tempting to use at first. Players are unlikely to check them first thing, so you can get the edge in the initial duel. However, the problem with both positions is that there's no real way for you to fall back. You're fully committed to fighting every enemy that comes to your line of sight. This means that you could win that first duel easily, but you'll also likely get traded out and lose map control. A 1-for-1 trade is not favorable as a defender. You lose control, plus your team has to reposition themselves to cover lost ground. This boosted triple box position is also not very good as it exposes you from both A short and showers, which we just discussed is a no-no to be exposed to multiple angles. Now let's take a look at some better positions to be in. For example, being on the back corner of U-Haul is a good spot. You can take the initial duel against a player pushing A short and then quickly back up. Having this fallback also allows you to bait shots from the enemy. You could jiggle peek around prior to fully committing to the fight. This could throw off the enemy's timing and make for an easier kill. Another example is behind truck. Similarly, you can isolate showers from this position and fall back to the truck if needed, thus extending your life to give yourself another chance to frag or giving more time for your team to rotate to help you. Being able to fall back from a position is crucial to allowing you to live and have other options for how you want to approach a situation. Whether you want to fight again from a different angle or completely dip, this gives you options. We're going to get into some really cool tips and tricks on positioning, but if you want to really take things to the next level and climb up to Radiant, then you want to check out our website at SkillCapped.com. On our website, we have multiple comprehensive courses and guides on various aspects of the game. If you want to learn more tips on how to perfect your aim, we got you covered. Or perhaps you want to truly master a certain agent that you're currently struggling with, we got that covered as well, and so much more. We guarantee you'll see significant improvements quickly, so if you're interested in taking your game to that next level, the link will be provided in the description below. Moving on, another question that you want to ask yourself is whether or not you can assist your teammates from your current position. Checking off those first two boxes is important, but remember that Valorant is a team-based game. You and your team want to be set up so that you can work off each other. Let's move over to the B site on Bind. A potential setup that could be done is one player plays hookah and one player plays B long. This is actually a pretty common setup that we see, and it is okay, but it's not great. Both positions aren't exposed to multiple angles and you can fall back from them to a certain degree, so that's good. However, if both players are set up in this manner, it doesn't allow the two players to help each other out. Both of them are going for individual duels and they're too far away to help one another if something goes wrong. Now let's take a different setup where a player is in hookah and a player is in left side containers. Both players are still checking out the first two criteria, but now they can help each other out quickly if need be. For example, if an enemy starts pushing out of hookah, the hookah player can start backing up towards the boxes on A site. Once the hookah player starts getting into a fight, the player backside can peek out and help. The same scenario could be repeated, but for B long if necessary. Another setup that's really good for allowing teammates to help each other out is a Crossfire setup. This is a setup where two players are positioned in opposite directions, yet peeking the same angle. If we have players positioned in cubby and elbow, this creates that Crossfire setup. Anyone pushing the site will get shot from two directions, thus increasing the odds of fragging and halting the push. A fourth question you want to ask yourself when picking a position is whether or not the enemy knows that you're likely playing there. A big mistake that low elo players make is they play the same position over and over again without even the slightest change. For example, let's take ramps on split with an operator. This is great for grabbing an initial pick when the enemy isn't expecting you to be there. But if you do this often enough, players will start predicting it and will come up with a plan to stop you. A common counter strat for the ramp peek is to throw 2 flashes, one at the start of the round and then another back ramp. They then have Jet dashing into ramp to pick off the operator. Just like that, you lost crucial sight control while also losing an expensive weapon that the enemy team can now pick up. It's easy for enemies to come up with counters if you do the same thing over and over. This can turn an originally good position into a bad one, as enemies can just swarm your position with a fast push and abilities. Because of this, you want to constantly be switching up to other good positions. If ramp is no longer good and too predictable, you can start playing onto heaven, which gives you a nice and slim angle to hit a shot and fall off for free. Similarly, elbow and screens are other additional positions that can be good to play, as they clear off the first 2 checkboxes that we already talked about, and depending on your teammate's position, it could clear off the third. And now that you have switched things up, the enemies are constantly on their toes and have to guess where you're going to be. This makes these good positions even better now that there's this added mystery factor in play. Point being, having one good position in your toolbox isn't going to be enough. There are tons of positions like the one we've discussed so far. You want to have multiple for each map you play, so you can change positions when one is starting to get figured out. With those 4 points made, we're going into more advanced tips regarding optimizing positioning. We do want to clarify though that it is pretty tough to fully check no to all 4 points. Typically, you'll probably be able to get 2 of them easily to make for a great position, but an awesome position would clear all 4 points. Aim to get at least 2 of them covered, but the more points you get, the better. With that 4th point out of the way, it's important to note that whether or not a position is good can change given certain situations. For example, let's take Pocket on A site. This position is pretty good if you have a player in triple that can cover you. It checks everything out minus being able to fall back. However, this position quickly turns bad if the player covering showers gets eliminated. Now you can get pinched from A short and showers. You're in a bad position with your teammate being eliminated now. Because of that, you always want to be ready to adapt when map control is lost. In this certain scenario, one of the best moves to make is to switch your attention over to showers to try to eliminate those players prior to getting back to A short. This way you avoid getting peeked from multiple angles, and you have a shot at taking back a choke point that was lost. If you can regain showers, then all you and your team have to focus on for retake is the other half of A. This versus if you just stayed where you were, you could have gotten surrounded and the enemy team now has full sight control. When something changes on the map, whether your team rotated and left gaps on the defense, or whether your teammate falls, you have to consider other positions that can still fit the 4 checkpoints that we mentioned. Unfortunately, nothing in Valorant is really set in stone and most things are situational. If the scenario changes mid-round, you want to revisit those points and see if they're still applicable to your position. If it is, you're good. If not, you want to change your position to one that better hits those criteria. Last but not least, one element that can drastically improve your positioning is off angles. After playing Valorant for a while, you'll start to realize that there are common positions that people will try to play. Because they're so common, it's not unusual that an enemy would try to peek and clear that angle out. I mentioned predictability earlier today. Now, common positions aren't necessarily bad. They can still be effective if the player isn't entirely sure that you'll be there, thus leading to a less committed peek into certain positions. However, when facing against players who are very thorough with clearing these positions, it's important to try to play a position and angle that they aren't fully expecting. This is where off angles come to play, and off angle is when you play a position that is slightly, well, angled from what is commonly played. To give you an example, let's say we're fighting for showers control as a defender. It's pretty common for a player to try to peek back boxes from this corner. As such, many players will pre-aim this position prior to peeking it. This makes it easier for attackers to win the duel and puts you at a bit more of a disadvantage. So now we can switch things up with an off angle. Instead of straight peeking down showers, we can move slightly to the right. This is a small change up, but now you're positioned where players are less likely to pre-aim at. This gives you better odds of winning the aim duel. For a more extreme example, if the enemy doesn't go through showers right away, you can dash to the left side and play at any angle that isn't in the corners. Most players will clear the right side of showers, but mostly the very corner in the back. These off angles have a high success rate of catching enemies off guard and snagging some free frags. Essentially, an off angle can be made from anywhere on the map. Take a commonly played position and move ever so slightly away from that position where you can still hold the same choke point. This forces players to have to make an extra flick or micro adjustment to kill you versus you already having their crosshair lined up right where it needs to be. Off angles tend to be underlooked and underutilized at lower ranks. Pros will use them all the time to get free kills during their matches, so you should do the same to switch things up or when the common angles aren't working anymore. That's all we have for today's video. If you follow these tips, you'll quickly notice yourself getting more kills just by being in better positions than the enemy. We guarantee you'll be able to aim much more effectively if you position yourself properly prior to engaging in duels. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel down below to help support us. I'm Dr. Zora, we here at SkillCapped want to thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.